I love video games. I love playing with friends, exploring, competing, conquering together. And I love experiencing it alone as well, enjoying the time out of the real world stress we're subject to. But I'm aware of how intense things can get. Even though this violence is in a virtual world, some people believe that it can be directly translated to real world criminality. This alleged relation has been reported by multiple news outlets throughout the years, and even politicians have a say about it.
We have to look at the internet because a lot of bad things are happening to young kids and young minds, and their minds are being formed. And we have to do something about maybe what they're seeing and how they're seeing it, and also video games. I'm hearing more and more people say the level of violence on video games is really shaping young people's thoughts.
Enough attention. Understand that these are not harmless toys, that they can indeed cause great emotional and other damage to a child.
Well, this trend didn't start with video games, of course. The panic generated by these kind of ideologically sensationalist news have been here long before. It started all the way with comic books. In 1950s, a book called Seduction of the Innocent, which called upon comic books as dangerous and demeaning forms of entertainment. And the author of this book even goes as far as saying, end quote, Hitler was a beginner compared to the comic book industry, end quote. Then a couple years later, with the rise of metal and grunge bands such as Black Sabbath and Nirvana, the people decided to attack again, claiming that the Columbine shooters were heavily influenced by the artist Marilyn Manson.
If Marilyn Manson can walk into our town and promote hate, violence, suicide, death, drug use, and Columbine-like behavior, I can say, not without a fight you can't.
The two byproducts of that whole tragedy were violence and entertainment and gun control. And how perfect that was the two things that we were going to talk about with the upcoming election. And also then we forgot about Monica Lewinsky, and we forgot about the president was shooting bombs overseas, yet I'm a bad guy because I've sang some rock and roll songs.
Now coming back to video games, there's no supporting evidence that back any of these allegations, as there's a clear difference between causality and correlation. And correlation alone is not sufficient evidence to support claims of causation, especially when dealing with complex behaviors of violence. Now let's analyze if there's any historical correlation between the two. Here's a video game sales graph from 1980s to 2015. And here's a murder rate graph from 60s to 2010. As you can see, there's no direct correlation between the two, as murder rates go down and video game sales go up. Now, the arguments for mass shootings is even more absurd, as they are mostly committed by young men, and 70% of young men are under the age of 30 play video games. Now concluding to the fact of the matter, there's little to no causal evidence to suggest that video games are linked to violent behavior. But the power of mass media to terrorize and gaslight the people in an immense scale, and now even bigger, with social media instantly catapulting stories to insane crowds of people in seconds. And unfortunately, the older generation falls victim to sensationalist news that prioritize shock value instead of factual value because of a phenomenon called confirmation bias. And the more confident they are on their belief, the easier it is to get manipulated by questionable sources. By the way, there is a regulation on the amount of adult/violent content a game has. It's called ESRB, but the Constitution doesn't allow these age recommendations to become restrictions. So that'll depend on the parents.
So, in conclusion, it's critical to evaluate the evidence.
and even recognize the positive aspects of gaming, as for my English is almost completely attributed to it. By addressing these claims with an open and informed perspective, we can contribute to a more nuanced and accurate understanding of the relationship between video games and real-world behavior. Thank you.